Good morning. How's everybody doing? It's a good night last night? Yeah. Hope you had a good day yesterday. Ready for a good day today? I'm Frank DiGiamarino. I'm with AWS. I run our U.S. state and local government business. I love the pillar like right there. So I can't really see you guys. So maybe every now and then we'll go like this. And we do have the church effect going, so if anybody does want to come up front, there's plenty of seats. Really excited about this panel this morning. We have Donor Perfect, Ellucian, and OpenGov with us today. They asked me to moderate this panel because I came out of government to come to Amazon, and in between that period, I worked on a paper that was called "Can Government Work Like Open Table?" And the whole premise of the paper was that we've sort of reached a point where we need new models for how to get things done. And if you look at Open Table, they take data out of silos and put it into a platform that provides information, education, and technical assistance that enables you to do your job in a completely new way to get new outcomes. They're outcome brokers. And so one of the reasons why I came to Amazon is because Amazon as a platform is a really good way to enable outcome brokers. And what we think is that these three guys are all outcome brokers up here. And so what we've done is asked John, Jeff, and Jeff to give a little bit of an introduction on their company and what they're doing, and then we're going to roll through them one at a time, and then we'll do some Q&A. So that's how this is going to work. And am I just, are you going to use that or this?
I think this works. It does.
There you go. All right. So John, take it away. Here's the clicker.
Well, I think, are we going to just introduce each other real quick? Or just roll in the presentation?
I think in your presentation you'll...
Presentation first. Yeah. Okay, let's do that. I'm gonna use the mic and then walk around. All right. Everybody hear me? Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for coming out this morning and spending your very valuable time. About 12 hours ago, I was on a Little League field and leading our team to yet another finalist victory. That's code for second place. But we lost by one run, but as I tell the kids, life moves on. Who am I? My name is John Biederman. I am the Vice President of Fundraising Products at Donor Perfect Fundraising Software. We are a CRM software before the word CRM was actually invented. How do I know this? Because that was our first computer. And now we've come a long way, and we're into something called the cloud. Now, how many people are actually in the cloud right now? Okay. How many people were in the cloud in 2001? Okay, so Donor Perfect actually, I remember thinking, hey, this internet thing's going to probably be around. It's probably going to stick around. So there was this thing called VB Script and Microsoft SQL Server, and I had some coding background. And so in 2001, I decided to sit down and wrote some code. And we actually launched September 1st, 2001. That was an interesting month to launch a business. I'm also, though, however, very proud that our very first customer, or actually our second customer, was an organization called Future and Options for Kids. They called me on September 13th because their office was located in the World Trade Center. And they needed to have a database up and running as quickly as possible for their fundraising efforts. But what I'm here to talk about today is about innovation and how the cloud is able to provide technology and capacity, and most importantly, elasticity that has never been available before, at least for the clients I serve. So about 10 years ago, I've been involved in a project called the Fundraising Effectiveness Project, and 4 years ago, the outcome of that was something called the Growth and Giving Initiative. It's a collaboration Between the three organizations that you see here, we're the steering committee members. It's quite interesting how you write up a series of pages and you invent a group out of thin air. We're actually a program within the Urban Institute and also AFP. And I've had the pleasure of working with both Elizabeth Forrest, she's the former executive director of the Urban Institute, and also Andrew Watt, who is just recently the former president of AFP. But the bottom line is that the Growth and Giving Initiative is all about big data, and it's also about collaboration. What we're able to do is, for the first time, we are able to take all of the actual gift transactions that nonprofits have that use not only our software, but our competitor software. And we are able to aggregate all that information to provide real-time statistics. This has never been able to be done before because we didn't have the cloud. So what does this mean for nonprofits? Well, we actually can measure everything nearly in real time. So in the last year, for example, in 2015, we know that nonprofits raised 5.3% more. Their net change in donors was 2%, but most importantly, their donor retention was 46%. Now, what does that really mean? I can tell you, it actually means they're losing more donors than they're keeping, all right, which is actually a big problem for nonprofits. Can you imagine if you were in a business and you retained less than half your customers? You're a pizza shop and more than half of your customers didn't come back? That's the problem facing nonprofits. So what we're able to do, and the whole reason we're doing this with big data and innovating, is all around benchmarking. So we're able to provide real-time averages, statistics, data for our clients and all nonprofits so that they can benchmark, learn best practices, and do more. So why am I here? Well, because I'm here, I was asked to be here along with these fine gentlemen. We did move to AWS servers last year. We were, as I said, in the cloud for the last 15 years with a company called Pier 1, but then we did move to AWS. And since then, up until about a month ago, and my colleague Tom Gimple, he's Vice President of Product Development, we were at 100% uptime, but we did have at least one little glitch, but I think it was our fault. It was our fault. But it's near 100% uptime, and I could not say that with our other provider. So very happy to be here and innovating, and also, you know, the fact that we're in the cloud, it just leads to so much possibilities and capacity growth, and most importantly, elasticity growth, because now we can cover all the super days of fundraisings, which, for example, December 31st is our highest online giving day there is. And because we're on Amazon, everything else, we can actually sleep safely at night. And I'm going to give it over to my colleagues right here.
I'm going to stand.
Okay, you got it. I'll comment on you.
I will take the clicker, though. Excellent. All right, I'm going to try this. This is a new approach. We are tethered to the chair. This is. I'm always up for something new and unique. So, I guess I'm not
going.
second. You are. Let me back that up. There you go, Jeff.
Oh wow. Okay.
He's
I guess we're
try
gonna
this too.
okay. All right. Hi all. My name is Jeff Schultz. I'll just go with this. Yeah. My name is Jeff Schultz. I'm Chief Marketing Officer at OpenGov. Give you a little bit of a background of OpenGov. Actually, let me give a little background on myself. I actually started in the tech industry in 1987 as a programmer. I guess you call them engineers now. And eventually moved into customer support and then into marketing, and found my way to OpenGov about a year ago. And so OpenGov has been around since about 2012, actually built from the ground up on AWS. The history is much like a lot of startups in the Silicon Valley. It was a group of Stanford students that decided it would be really cool coming out of the Great Recession and out of the California budget crisis to do some visualizations of data as well as pension data to see, you know, to help the government see where things were going and detect problems. And they went to a bunch of governments, including the state of California, and asked for budget data and basically found out there was no way to get it. And so, you know, this group decided, hey, this is a real problem in government. We need to figure out a better way of getting this data and visualizing it. And so OpenGov was founded to do financial and performance intelligence and transparency and really help governments use the cloud to operate better. And fundamentally, we see three pervasive challenges that we're trying to solve for governments. First, increasing the spending power. So, by looking at things like accountability, how do governments become more accountable to their citizens and therefore be able to have the freedom to use money and spend it on our behalf, as well as providing insights to be able to do a better job of understanding how other governments are spending money and ultimately improve their operations. Efficiency. Governments, we know, are very much paper-based. They're bound by very old technology, and a lot of people in a lot of roles spend an enormous amount of time simply running reports, distributing reports, continuously updating data, not very high-value activities. We think we can make them more efficient and actually focus on strategy within those governments. And last but not least, preparing for the future. We know that in most governments around the world, huge numbers, upwards of 50% of people are past retirement age or due to retire. They know where all the data is kept within the government. They need to get it in some place that can be handed to the next generation. At the same time, the next generation are millennials who expect to be connected, expect to be on mobile devices, expect to be able to dive and dig into data and not have to go through paper-based manuals and PDFs to understand how their government is performing. So what we're doing is basically building what we view as the connected government. And our thinking here is that governments have always had to be connected. Early days, it was through waterways and then railroads and expressways. And if you were not on the network, you really could not thrive as a government. The new network is the internet and the cloud. And through that, we see an opportunity to connect governments within themselves, so government employees like finance directors and city managers and administrators at all sides of governments, connecting them to their departments and to elected officials. Then it's connecting governments to citizens so that they can do a better job of getting accountability, so that they can have the freedom to spend money and actually demonstrate the good that they're doing to the public and tell their story in a much better way. Connecting governments to governments. This is the true opportunity of the cloud, where more and more governments are putting data into cloud-based multi-tenant systems. We can now use data science to help them understand and gain insights from other governments and ultimately allow them to operate better and spend money much more efficiently. And last but not least, governments to infrastructure. So we all know the Internet of Things is out there. Smart cities are popping up. Sensor data, in our view, is basically the outcome of a lot of government spending. If you want to reduce traffic, you spend money, you budget for the reduction of traffic, and then you have to measure through sensors whether that's actually happening. So our view then is to connect governments to their infrastructure so that they can bring all this data into one place. And to do this, we see a couple key attributes. First, data-driven. We need to figure out how to break down silos between very antiquated financial systems, some of them still green screen systems being run in many cities and counties throughout the world. Breaking that data down, bringing it all together, providing really smart, simple applications that help them visualize data at a very granular level, enabling collaboration so that not just sharing data and reports, but actually collaborating and exchanging ideas and being able to do it between very technical people and non-technical people. And then last but not least, making it easy. One of the big learnings we've had here is, especially as you go out to some of the smaller governments in the country, you need to be able to do it in such a way that they can adopt it very, very quickly and not without a lot of complexity. And again, that's where the cloud and AWS comes in. And just to give you a couple examples of the impact of this, Bell, California actually became one of our early customers right after a multi-million-dollar scandal where almost everybody in the city council and the mayor went to jail for embezzling millions and millions of dollars. Recently, they came back to us and said, because of us, they've been able to regain the trust with their citizens because they are putting real-time data of very granular spending that their public can actually look at and see that they're not, in fact, hiding dollars in places that wouldn't have been able to detect if they just looked at a budget document in a PDF. Stanton, California used OpenGov to convince the public to fund an additional police officer for a human trafficking task force, and actually has been credited with breaking a prostitution ring very recently. So again, this isn't just about providing pretty numbers. This is about really trying to change the way the government operates. State of Ohio has actually purchased OpenGov for every municipality in the state so that they can put their checkbook data and see what vendors are doing. And we're now providing data to the state to help prosecute a fraud case where 2 salt vendors were splitting the state in half and price fixing. This is not the kind of thing that's possible if each individual city is running their own ERP system and not sharing data. It is possible when you bring it all into the cloud using something like OpenGov and AWS. And last but not least, the state of Pennsylvania just purchased us for an early warning system. where they are going to be able to use, there's these cities called Act 47 cities that are in financial distress, and they are all going to be putting their budget and actual data into OpenGov, rolling it up so that the state can have an early warning system to see whether or not those cities that are getting financial support are actually doing well. So, basically in conclusion, we think there's a huge opportunity to go to governments and provide innovation and provide a way through the cloud, through AWS, to be able to fundamentally change how they operate and how they spend our tax dollars. And that's OpenGov, and I'm looking forward to answering questions.
All right, we're gonna try this again. Okay. So I'm Jeff Rollier, the Senior Vice President of Product Management at a company called Ellucian. And Ellucian is focused on one industry, and that's higher education. And it's higher education on a global basis, but we have our largest presence is here in North America. And if we boil down our mission, what we would actually call our true north, it's really student success. And it's thinking about what do we do to enable institutions of higher education, institutions of learning, to help students actually successfully navigate the experience of getting a degree and then the outcome of getting a degree, finding that first job. And the reason we think student success is so important is because we believe that by driving student success, we're actually going to have a significant impact on society as a whole. And that's because if you look at the research shows that as students go through and successfully graduate with a post-secondary degree, they have better opportunities to earn. They get more involved in their communities. And that involvement in the community, their ability to provide for their families, that then has that positive effect on society. So for us, there's a great emotional paycheck, right, every day by thinking about how do we bring innovation into higher education. And about 18 months ago, we began partnering with Amazon to transform our entire portfolio to be a cloud-based portfolio. And we'll have that transformation done by the end of this year. And when we think about how do we go about helping institutions, we really look at it from 4 value criteria that higher education has told us is important to them. And that's really around driving student success. It's around that constituent experience. It's about driving operational efficiency. And then finally, it's about allowing the institutions to grow organically. And if we break that down into each area, when we think about student success really starts with recruiting the right student. It's not just about filling seats. That doesn't work. You have to actually identify the right student for the programs that you offer. So you need propensity models and predictive models that when you're looking at your prospective student base, you know that this set of students for these programs have a higher success rate than other students. So you want to bring in the right students. And then when you get them in, you want to advise them appropriately. You want them to be able to plan their degree. You want them, if ultimately they need to transfer, right? If they're starting at a community college, they want to know that transfer equivalency and be able to plan when they move to a 4-year school, that everything they're taking in the 2-year school is going to help them as they move forward from a 4-year degree. And then ultimately helping them advise through, right, these are what you need to do to be successful. And providing tools that will help you identify from an early predictive measure, these are students that are in trouble right now, and what are the activities that we could be having these students do that would help them get back on track. So that's driving student success. But one of the ways that you drive student success is by making sure that the constituents that leverage our software, right, have the best experience that they can. And for today's, Jeff mentioned the millennials. We know that the college students today, they carry on average 3.5 devices on them at all times, right? So whether it be iPads, multiple phones, other devices. And those students, right, they grew up on Facebook and Twitter. They understand the Amazon buying experience. They mandate that the experience that they have with the software that they work with, right, is built for them. It provides the experience that they're used to, and it's on their device anywhere, anytime. And if we think about even the faculty and the advisors, they're looking for self-service systems that they can access via any device, via, right, really a cloud delivery model. And so it's looking at that the constituent experience in a way that allows people to be effective with the software that they use. Now, I need to go back one. And then ultimately that effective software really is what, the effective use of software is what allows institutions to drive operational efficiency. Also, by us partnering with AWS to take our solutions to the cloud, one of the things that we're able to do is begin to lower the cost profile of innovation in higher education. And that's huge. And that's huge because today we know that schools are under massive cost constraints. Their funding is drying up, right? So if you're a state-funded school, if you're a community college, if you're a four-year public, what you're getting from a funding perspective diminishes year over year. And if you can drive efficiencies and you can get more effective with the dollars that you're spending, and we can help drive costs out of implementing innovation, that allows the institutions to focus on other things that they can do. And when we think about other things, that could be moving, if you're a community college, it's moving into continuing education where you partner with local manufacturers, you partner with local businesses to keep the workforce up to date from a skill perspective. And you can begin to build those programs because you've freed up funding to be able to do that. Or you can begin to offer certificate-based or competency-based education, which is a different learning style for today's students where they don't want to go through a 13-month or kind of a 13-week traditional semester. What they want to be able to do is say, I already have the skills that I can test out of most of this course. So let me test out of most of the course and then let me on my own time, at my own pace, prove that I have the rest of the competencies. Without having freed up the funding, it'd be very difficult for schools to be able to do that. And when we think about scale, it's kind of fun. You are absolutely right. Somebody in another room is just clicking for me, going back and forth. When we think about scale in terms of how the effect that we have. So we're in 2,400 institutions today. We are by far the largest provider of innovation in higher education. In North America, we represent about 70% of the institutions of higher education. We affect 18 million students on an annual basis. And if you think about what that means, that's not a static number. That is 5,500 more students every single year that are coming into higher education that we have an opportunity to impact. And we take that very seriously. That's why we focus on the innovation that we are, so that we can help the schools that run our software make sure that they're driving student outcomes. And it's really about the student outcome. When we really think about the mission of a college, the mission of a university, it's to help those students not just get a degree, but to actually get a productive job after they get that degree. And so with that, I think we're going to open it up to Q&A.
Great job, guys. And right on time, I might add, right? How about that? Yeah. So I talked about outcome brokers at the beginning, and just a few people came a little bit late, so I'll just hit that again real quick, which is just the idea of how can you get data out of silos and put it onto a platform that provides information, education, and technical assistance to enable you to broker new outcomes. And all these guys are brokering outcomes. So I'm going to turn it to you guys very soon to ask questions. I'm going to only just maybe even ask one, and you don't all have to answer, but sort of what are you guys thinking, what's next? What's when you look at your business and you see how the innovation that you're driving, where do you see that innovation coming from? What are you guys looking forward to? What new outcomes are you going to broker? It looks like Jeff's ready to jump out of his seat.
Yeah.
He's like, holy mackerel.
Oh my, too much coffee maybe. No, actually, no, that's a great question. I think we're looking at innovation in two different ways, but first and foremost, we have to provide value to our customers, the governments themselves, who are getting value out of this data and figuring out how to get more and more of that data into the system. I think what's really next, the big innovation, is the network. And this is where, as more and more governments come on board, as they're giving us very accurate, timely, up-to-date financial data plus performance data, we can start to provide insights to them about how they're operating. Or if you're about to budget for a new police fleet, we can tell them all the governments in their area, all the governments around the world like them that have just bought new police cars. What have they had to look at? What was the kind of financing they got? What kind of, how much did they cost? There's just a ton of data that can be used in real time out of the network once that network is built, and it's kind of a chicken and the egg thing. We started off just get web, transparency sites up and running, but the real end goal here is to leverage data science, and that's again only something that you can do when you're using something like AWS in the cloud, where all that data is together and normalized in a way that our data scientists can actually start building algorithms and predictive analysis. So that's really where that's going. We're starting to see it now. We have some apps that are already out there doing it, but that's going to be the real trajectory. Cool.
I think there's, in higher ed, there's really two. One is very similar to what you're talking about, Jeff, in terms of the use of data. If you look at a number of the things that are out there, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation just did a study on metrics for success, and it's having institutions look at all of the data that they have on campus and be able to say, well, what kind of outcomes are we driving, and what were the programs that we put in place that were most successful, and how can we get that repeatability of success going on? And only now do they actually have the ability to have all of that data normalized up into a cloud environment. The other thing that we're looking at from an innovation, though, is taking that to the next level, which is the comparables, right? Which is, well, how do you then compare to other institutions that are like you, and what are they doing versus what are you doing, and how can you learn from an outcome perspective? So I think that's probably one of the biggest ones that we're looking at from an innovation perspective.
Right, and I just follow that. It really is all about data. And it sounds like, oh, well, that's an obvious question, but let me ask right now in the room, how many people in the room right now, so that means you're gonna have to look up, have given an online donation to a nonprofit? Online donation, okay, great. All of you are a statistical anomaly, okay? The reason being is that we know that only about 6% of the entire $350 billion is made online. Secondly, the average age of a donor in America is 72. All right, I'm looking around the room, maybe 1, 2 people's over 72, I don't think so. And so what we're trying to do is get that data out there, and I think that's gonna be the next biggest thing, so people can make data-based decisions and not try to win contests on Facebook, because that's what everybody else is doing.
Right. All right, so now to you guys. Any questions for the panelists? Please, here.
Hey, this one's for Jeff. I'm still a college student at
Hey, I'm here for I have a question for the how do you pronounce it? Elysian?
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 Yep.
Yeah, I'm still a student at the College of William and Mary. Tribe? Anyone?
All right.
No one? Okay. I actually have a question that I wanted to know, like, if you had any specific stories of, because you said you had like 40 years of experience of the company. And I wanted to see if you had any experience actually like helping like a state school save money or become more efficient, something like that.
So a couple different ones of just case studies. One is SUNY, which is the State University of New York system, is one of our largest customers, and they have been a client for about 30 years, and we meet with their kind of central CIO on an annual basis to put in programs that are targeted to drive anywhere from 5 to 15% cost reduction on an annual basis in terms of synergies. The latest one that is really have been a data project to basically begin to look at, right, where are the biggest efficiency gains at the different schools within SUNY, so that they can then begin to create operational excellence and create centers of excellence from a learning perspective, so that the schools are actually beginning to learn from each other on how to become more operationally efficient. I'll use another one that isn't really around saving money, unless you equate keeping students on campus as a way of retaining revenue and therefore not losing money. And so Howard University implemented one of our advising systems, and it's a predictive system that allows us to pull in a significant amount of data, so basically everything about the students that are on campus, and we run it through a predictive model that helps us identify really 2 primary cohorts. The first cohort are students that are at risk, and then the other cohort are students that should be advanced or accelerated. But Howard University, after basically just running the program for 48 hours, identified 100 students that were actually Fulbright scholarship capable, right? And so they didn't know that, but obviously once you're able to do that and you can bring that amount of funding to the students, they have a much greater propensity to stay with you, right? And then obviously that's going to help your revenue stream. So that's 2.
Excellent. Got 2 questions going. All right.
this is for all three of y'all. ROI. Each one of you has a different ROI, whether it be for, my apologies, measurement of how many people are donors, how many repeat donors, if it's a educational institution, the retention rates and those types of things. And obviously, when you look at big data and the transparency of having to go into, as you were saying, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania with the different cities. Who cares most about the ROI? Is there an audience within your client base that you're seeing that cares? Is it a specific person that's looking at it, or is it across the board? Because obviously when you're using infrastructure and using technology, these are things that disrupt silos, they disrupt culture, but there also is some champion somewhere that's looking at that ROI. Who is your champion for that?
You want to go first, John?
Sure, yeah, I'll be on the hot seat. So most of our organizations, the average annual budget is about just around $1 million. We've got some that are smaller, a lot that are larger. So when it comes down to it, for those smaller guys, it really is the board member. It comes down to a board member who does care about, hey, we know we need to invest in this because it's going to pay off. Why? Because we need to share data. We can do it on our phones. I know that we've got one client for actually higher education. He was so excited once we came out with a mobile app because he went from being able to manage 250 major donors to 400 because of the mobile app. And that type of efficiency gains is what's going to drive people looking at ROI. At the larger ones, it boils down to typically the CFO, obviously, but with most of our clients, it's at the board member level.
I think for us, it really, because of the portfolio and the breadth that we have, we can be very specific into a very specific area of university. So when we talk about recruiting, we are very specific to the ROI of the head of recruiting and admissions. But when we talk about the portfolio and the ROI of the portfolio, that's really the provost and the president, right? And talking about, right, when I had up my 4-quadrant wheel, that each of those areas collectively speaks to the provost and what the strategic plan on campus is, and supporting the strategic plan, both from achieving the goals, but also driving an ROI out of achieving the goals.
Yeah, actually, for us, that's a great question, and maybe one of the hardest things that we actually have to tackle. We deal with governments from like very, very small special districts and townships all the way up through state agencies, states, and even starting in the federal. And the person that is our champion varies. And part of the issue as you go out and sell to governments is that you also have people in varying stages of technology adoption in terms of being visionaries or early adopters or very conservative. And so we spend an enormous amount of time going into cities and trying to figure out, is it the finance director that fundamentally knows that he or she wants to get more financial data out in front of people and make better decisions, and that they're spending all their time getting responding to Freedom of Information Act requests and really could free up that time? Is it the city manager that wants to do a better job of building council relationships? A lot of times we're going into elected officials, city council, mayors, who got elected on a platform of accountability, and that was, they, in many cities, they used to be, they're the baseball coach, and then they say, all right, I'm gonna, it's great, a lot of baseball coach, it is the next career. So, and it's like, listen, something has to be done about this city. I'm gonna run for office, and I'm gonna make things accountable. And now it's like, okay, they're there, and they need to do that. And so our sales team actually, we spend an enormous amount of time working on this process of, when we go into cities, figuring out who is the person that is really the right mindset, because we have ROI and value props for any one of these types of roles, and it's just finding the right person that's receptive. And then the next challenge for us is figuring out who actually has the power to make the decision, and that really becomes the hard part in all these different governments. I mean, and this is new in I've never had to prepare presentations for city council and actually have, a city manager and a finance director say, yes, I want this, but, come back in a month on a Monday night, and it's going to go to vote in front of the public. And so that's the other difficult thing to navigate, but definitely one of the key things we focus on.
I have an open question for the panel. My name is Chip Justice with Cloud Intelligence Consulting. Predominantly, this question is going to be directed more towards Jeff, but for all three of you. Organizations, especially within the federal government, are not encouraged to save money senior executives are rewarded for spending all of their money. How are you dealing with this disruptive change to organizational behavior?
That was for me, Jeff?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, and actually that is true. I mean, we treat governments are very different from businesses. In many cases you go to them and they have a certain amount of money. It's based on tax revenue and other types of things. Or in the federal government, it's based on appropriations and all. And yeah, there's not. The point is not to save money. They're not for-profit organizations, and so they will tend to want to spend money. Our view is really two things. First, how do you spend money better? And so if you're gonna spend that money, how can you put it into the right places? How can you use the network and comparisons to understand what other people are doing and put it in the right place? And at the same time, potentially look for ways to do it more efficiently, so that you're not spending. A lot of, especially at the smaller level. I agree. You asked about federal, but the smaller level governments. They are very strapped for resources. So oftentimes these very senior folks in a local government are doing very menial reporting tasks. And so they would view a solution like ours as like a free analyst that they didn't have before. At the federal level, though, it really comes down to how much are we spending on people that are doing a lot of very menial reporting tasks that we can make more efficient. And again, how do you do a better job of taking the money that you've been given to spend and put it in the right places, and then show the public that in fact you are putting it into those right places.
Yeah, I just want to follow up on that, because besides what I do, I'm actually work with both of our townships, and we recently completed a $1.5 million parking lot and baseball light project. So the coach, it only took 30 months. But I think the seismic shift I know that's going on in our community in Pennsylvania is there's more information available. Our board of supervisors, who really are the people that run the show for the last 100 and some odd years, they're being disrupted right now. And they're not getting reelected. And we have a whole wave of people also in this, our Board of Education too, that are getting elected based on transparency. And now I'm going to give them your name.
There you go.
Well, and
Talk to us when you run as well.
That's right. I think building on both of that, right? In higher education, especially state-funded higher education, right? They get their money, but the scrutiny that is being applied now, right? To, well, what did you spend it on, and what was the outcome? So the expectation is that they spend their budget, right? And in the past, right, kind of like the 110 years up until now, nobody really validated that what they spent it on had a actual positive outcome or an appropriate outcome. And so, but the universities and colleges, they are being scrutinized from a reporting perspective on, great, you spent your budget. On what, and then what was the outcome, and did you have a planned outcome before you actually went and spent the money? Because that's the other thing that that we're seeing as a trend is, you have the freedom to spend, but you have the accountability, right, and the responsibility to report back on what did you spend it on and what were the outcomes.
Yeah, actually, one last thing just to follow up. I think that is ultimately the great point. So. I think we're not going to change the mindset today of I've got a budget, I'm going to spend it. But if you can help people spend money better and relate it to outcomes and convince the public, I think over time we might find that we don't need as much money to do the things that are most important to do. Right. And so that would be sort of a long-term transition that we can embark on. It's not going to happen overnight, though.
Right. Good point.
More mission for the money you have, right?
That's right.
More mission.
That's right.
Any other questions, audience?
One in the back, behind the pillar.
Behind the pillar. Yeah. Here I come.
That's good spatial acuity.
So my question is a little bit, about a different aspect maybe of what the work you're doing. What is the education component, I guess? I was thinking specifically of the graphs that Jeff Schultz showed, specifically the stacked chart. As an analyst, I provide a lot of visualizations to my organization, and to some extent, people are happy with just seeing, hey, there's data, it's open, awesome, but they don't always know how to read things like a stacked bar chart, especially when you're providing information to the public or even to educational administrations. What is the education component as far as how to interpret the data?
Yeah, it's a great question. And so first and foremost, what we try to do is make it so simple that it's pretty intuitive. And in fact, with financial data especially, it's difficult because if you were to go into the ERP system, the way things are coded is really meant for a financial analyst to understand, not for the public to understand. So actually, one of the things we do is we have a fairly significant customer success team within OpenGov that works with our customers at the very onset to help think about their chart of accounts and how they label everything and how to translate that into something that could be understandable by the public or even by city council, people who are not financial experts. We then try very, very hard working with our users on user experience testing to try to make it so that we don't have to do a lot of training and that it is pretty obvious. So for instance, because it's on the web, because it's interactive, if you mouse over things, numbers pop up. So it's not like looking at a fairly static chart in Excel where you have to spend a lot of time thinking about it. As you mouse over things, information pops up. As you click on it, you can drill down. It's very obvious. And so that's one of the innovations that we can do by being on the web and frankly try to avoid having to do something so complex that it would require a lot of training. The real training and the work goes up front in the setup to help make it understandable from the very beginning.
Just to quickly add, if you go to the city of Tallahassee, the website, they did the transparency piece with us. There is a video that they themselves put out. It's telling you step by step how to interpret the data within OpenGov.
Yeah.
It's cool. It's like 3 minutes, and then you can click onto the website and see all the different reports and understand it.
Yeah, actually, that's a very, very, very excellent point. So what we find is a lot of our customers get so into it that they will build videos. Like they'll actually present their budgets. Like their annual budget presentation is no longer a 300-page binder. It's actually a video that zooms in on charts and stuff and has narration on top of it. So it's kind of fun to see that.
And they're building that themselves.
And they're actually building that themselves. Yeah.
That's interesting. Other questions?
We have one over here.
So I was wondering, what challenges or barriers have you had with getting data out of silos that are local? What stakeholders are, I guess, giving you the biggest fuss when you're trying to get information out? And can you explain a little bit about it?
Is that to me?
I think that's to you.
That's to me. Yeah, that's hard. I mean, it really is hard. I mean, we deal with, sometimes we deal with people who have been in government for a long, long time and they know everything about the government except how to get the data out of the ERP system. Because in many cases, they're even having to write SQL queries and stuff like that to get the data. So we work pretty closely with them. I guess there's really there's the technical aspect, first of all, of training them to get some of this data out in a way that can be imported. We've done a lot of work to make the import process easy. So it's really, the hard part is getting just the data out of those systems. We can even do it real time now with over 80 ERP systems that are in use. Definitely there's a cultural issue as well in working with governments who have not had to have that kind of data out there. Now technically that data is all public data. They would have to provide it if they got a Freedom of Information Act request and they know that. So it really is a process that we work, our sales team, our customer success team will work with a lot of these folks to understand that the data that they're providing really is not data they wouldn't have to provide anyway. And oh, by the way, when it's in a system like OpenGov, it's much more understandable and you can actually start to tell your story around that data much better than you could if you got those ad hoc requests. So for instance, adding notes, adding annotations, being able to show that this number is up 1 year because of something that happened or down 1 year for something that happened. So we're adding a lot more context and information to the data, and I think that helps people rationalize the fact that some of this data is more public than it was before.
Hi, I guess my question is for Jeff from Elucian.
Yeah.
Jeff, given your application was, from a legacy standpoint, an on-prem solution,
yeah,
and you've converted your business into a cloud-based business, can you describe how your platform, your product, will evolve in the new context to meet the new setting?
Yeah, that's a great question. We've had two challenges. One, we build a lot of new innovation from the ground up to just be software as a service, microservice based and everything else. But when you're looking at a platform that's been around for 40 years, it's really, the investment has predominantly been in DevOps tooling, right, that can be adopted by an on-premise product. So that instead of trying to go back and retrofit an on-premise product, which would be very difficult and kind of like unraveling a ball of yarn, it's been easier to build a DevOps tool chain, right, and then look at how that DevOps tool chain actually gets adopted by the on-premise solutions, right? And then what that allows them to do is keep the majority of their core product in place so that they don't have to do that. And that's important for us because we are not going to bifurcate that product, right? So whatever we invest in from an innovation perspective, from a new feature, new capability, we have to be able to deliver that to the cloud solution and to all of our on-premise customers. So it was really not looking at how do we rewrite the ERP product, it was how do we build a tool chain that the ERP product could actually adopt.
And for us, it takes a very long time. That we've been in the cloud for 15 years. It was just this last June 1st where we finally killed off our installed product. So it took 15 years to make that transition to everybody to a totally 100% in the cloud. So basically time and pressure.
Very good point.
All right, well, we're pretty much at time here. And I just want to, first of all, thank these guys for taking the time and sharing your thoughts. Really great stuff. So can we give them a round of applause? And then I do want to say, too, that there are folks from my team in the room who focus on what we call GovTechs, which are these disruptors that are working with government to drive change. And so I just want to, Matt, can you stand up, say this is Matt and Nick I saw. Anyone else I'm missing? No? So if you do have a disruptive solution that you're bringing to market, we want to hear about it, and we want to help you. So please feel free to reach out to us. And with that, I am super excited about what you guys have done and are going to do, and thanks for being outcome brokers. And then the one other thought to share is, to drive innovation in government, you need to treat data as a national asset, use IT as a commodity, and create more cultures of collaboration. So do more stuff with all of those things. So I wish you all good luck in innovating. Thanks for your time.